Saturday mornings once felt magical, filled with cartoons, cereal, and laughter. Those simple moments created lasting memories, a kind of joy and excitement that never feels quite the same again. Clarissa Explains It All was the first show where a teenage girl truly spoke her mind and spoke directly to you. Clarissa Darling, played by Melissa Joan Hart, wasn't your perfect sitcom daughter. She was quirky, creative, and had a personality as bold as her fashion. From sibling rivalry to school stress, Clarissa turned everyday teenage problems into funny, relatable stories. She would talk straight to the audience, breaking that invisible wall of television and making every viewer feel like her best friend. The show's humor was smart and ahead of its time, often poking fun at adult expectations and teenage frustrations alike. It celebrated individuality before it became a buzzword, encouraging kids to embrace their weirdness. For young viewers, it was refreshing to see a character who wasn't afraid to speak up or stand out. Clarissa made being different look cool. But while she was busy explaining it all, another show was already teaching lessons of its own through rhythm, rhyme, and the power of reading. Dungeons & Dragons was darker and more serious than most Saturday morning cartoons. It dropped a group of kids into a fantasy world filled with monsters, magic, and danger. Each character had a special role and weapon, making teamwork essential. The stories felt emotional because the goal was always the same: find a way home. Kids connected with the fear, hope, and bravery of the characters. The Dungeon Master guided them with riddles instead of answers, making every episode feel mysterious. The villains were genuinely scary, and the stakes felt high. This cartoon trusted kids to handle complex stories and moral choices. It felt different from everything else on television. And after spending time in such a dangerous fantasy world, the next cartoon brought things back to a brighter, softer tone filled with charm, humor, and magical creatures. It didn't take long for someone to suggest something with a little more intensity and a lot more running. Kickball Dead Man's Base was the version of kickball that felt like it had been invented by kids who wanted drama. Outs didn't leave the field, they became hunters. Once tagged out, you joined the pursuit, chasing down the players who were still trying to score. The backyard became a battleground of kicking, sprinting, and chaotic alliances that changed without warning. Everyone had theories about strategy, but theories didn't matter when adrenaline kicked in. The ball flew, the bases were whatever object someone could find: an upside-down bucket, a frisbee, a patch of dirt, and arguments about whether someone was truly safe lasted longer than the game itself. Parents called it nonsense, kids called it genius. The joy wasn't in scoring, it was in the thrill of avoiding the entire outfield closing in like a pack of wolves. Once the game ended in sweaty triumph or crushing defeat, kids needed something less cutthroat, at least for a few minutes. Transformers were not just toys, they were legends in disguise. Each one hid a secret identity: cars, jets, or trucks that folded, twisted, and clicked into towering robots. Kids would spend hours mastering every transformation, their imaginations exploding with battles between Autobots and Decepticons. The clacking sound of plastic joints became the soundtrack of playtime. Every figure carried its own story, its own courage, and for many, its own broken limb from too much excitement. Transformers taught an entire generation that strength could hide in plain sight. They were innovation, storytelling, and creativity rolled into one. And while the robots waged their epic wars, another hero was rising. One with muscles, magic swords, and the power of Grayskull. Fraggle Rock was pure Jim Henson magic. Deep beneath the human world lived the Fraggles, colorful puppet creatures who sang, danced, and taught kids about harmony, cooperation, and respect. The show used fantasy to teach real lessons about society, friendship, and understanding differences. Each episode carried music that stuck in your head and messages that stayed in your heart. The Doozers built, the Gorgs ruled, and the Fraggles dreamed, creating a vibrant underground society that felt strangely familiar. Fraggle Rock encouraged teamwork and empathy long before those words became classroom staples. It made the idea of community fun, turning even complex ideas about peace and respect into catchy songs and joyful moments. Children watched for the fun, but they left with wisdom. Jim Henson's vision was that the world above could learn from the world below, and he was right. As the Fraggles danced their cares away, another group of performers were clowning around above ground, creating a television circus that defined mornings for millions. The Snorks felt familiar and strange at the same time. They lived underwater in a bright, colorful world filled with bubbles, coral cities, and quirky inventions. Kids loved the snorkels on their heads that lit up when they talked, making every conversation feel playful. The show focused on friendship, problem-solving, and everyday adventures beneath the sea. It had a calm tone that made it perfect for weekend mornings. The characters were easy to recognize, each with their own personality and role in the community. The underwater setting sparked imagination and made kids wonder what hidden worlds might exist just beyond sight. Watching the Snorks felt relaxing, like floating through a dream. And as the ocean faded away, the next cartoon brought gothic humor and spooky laughs that were unlike anything else on television. Backyard Olympics turned the yard into an international sporting arena, or at least that's how it felt. Kids invented events on the spot. Leaf raking races, hula hoop endurance, water balloon shot put, and the legendary hose javelin toss. Don't try that now. Someone always acted as the referee, even if they were wildly biased. Scorekeeping was done in marker on someone's arm or on cardboard ripped from a cereal box. Medals were foil-wrapped cookies or paper circles tied to shoelaces. The competition was fierce but friendly, fueled by pride and popsicles. Kids who'd never run a race in their life suddenly cared about finishing first. Every event ended with cheers, groans, or protests that would make the Olympics organizing committee sweat. And once the last medal was handed out, and the closing ceremony involved laying in the grass, staring at the sky, kids looked around and knew summer had plenty more games left to play. The Nintendo Entertainment System changed everything. When kids unwrapped that gray console on Christmas morning, the world suddenly opened into pixels and possibilities. Super Mario, Zelda, and Duck Hunt became household names, turning television screens into playgrounds. The sounds, the jump, the coin, the victory tune became part of childhood itself. It was magic you could control, a universe that responded to your touch. Families gathered around the television not to watch, but to play. The Nintendo was not just a console, it was a portal into imagination, competition, and pure joy. And for those who had started gaming a little earlier, there was one machine that had already paved the way for it all. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was not just a show, it was a sanctuary. Every episode began with the soft sound of a trolley and the warm smile of Fred Rogers changing into his sweater and sneakers. In a world full of noise, he brought calm. Mr. Rogers spoke to children, not at them, helping them understand emotions, kindness, and self-worth in ways that no other show dared to. He tackled topics like sadness, fear, and even loss, subjects most shows avoided, with empathy and honesty. Through his gentle words and quiet tone, he made every child feel seen and loved. The puppets, the songs, and the simple lessons created a world that felt both magical and deeply human. Mr. Rogers taught that being kind was not just something you did, it was who you became. His neighborhood was a safe place that millions of children called home. But as one generation found peace in his neighborhood, another found adventure in the strangest, funniest, and most heartfelt suburb on television. Jem and the Holograms brought music, drama, and style to Saturday mornings in a way no other cartoon dared to try. It was not just about action or jokes, it was about fame, friendship, and identity. Jem lived a double life, balancing music stardom with everyday responsibilities, and that made the show feel surprisingly grown up. Kids loved the flashy concerts, colorful outfits, and catchy songs that felt like real pop hits. The villains were dramatic, the conflicts felt emotional, and every episode ended with a lesson that did not feel forced. Gem proved that cartoons could be glamorous and meaningful at the same time. It opened the door for storytelling that went beyond simple adventures. And just when the music faded, the next cartoon dove underwater and showed that even the ocean could have its own Saturday morning star. They knew this was only the beginning of the summer adventures still waiting to be played. Hose hockey was proof that kids in the 70 seconds and 80 seconds could turn anything into a sport. Forget ice rinks and fancy equipment, this game needed a garden hose, a plastic cup, and enough backyard space to cause chaos. The hose sprayed across the ground like a fireman training gone rogue, and kids aimed the water to push the cup toward makeshift goals made of shoes, overturned buckets, or whatever clutter was lying around. Control was impossible. The hose kicked like a wild animal, soaking everyone within range, and every accidental face shot with cold water sparked both outrage and hysterical laughter. Arguments broke out about whether a goal counted or if the cup was out of bounds, but nobody ever stopped long enough to care. Wet grass turned the ground into a slip zone, which only made the game better. It wasn't about score, it was about surviving. And once shirts were drenched and fingers started pruning, kids ditched the hose for something a little drier. The Atari 2600 was the beginning of everything. Long before online leaderboards or 3D graphics, there was the flicker of a television screen and the hum of a cartridge sliding into place. Games like Pong, Asteroids, and Space Invaders introduced kids to digital adventure for the first time. The joystick felt like power itself, simple, direct, and thrilling. The Atari 2600 was a revolution hidden inside a wooden console. It taught the world that entertainment could live in circuits, not just stories. Those glowing pixels were the foundation of gaming as we know it. And when kids finally looked away from their screens, they often turned to a toy that seemed to come alive, one that spoke, blinked, and told stories all on its own. Wishbone wasn't your average television show. It was part adventure, part education, and entirely heartwarming. The star was a small Jack Russell Terrier with an imagination bigger than most people. Wishbone reimagined timeless tales like Romeo and Juliet, Robin Hood, and The Odyssey, blending real-life lessons with the wonder of classic literature. It took stories that once seemed dusty and old and made them come alive through the eyes of a lovable dog. Kids who might never have picked up a book suddenly found themselves fascinated by heroes, legends, and epic journeys. The brilliance of the show was how it connected imagination to real life, teaching that even small characters could live large adventures. Wishbone's storytelling style was both funny and smart, keeping kids and parents hooked alike. It made reading feel like playtime. But as Wishbone left his mark on television, another cartoon was preparing to teach children lessons, not through books, but through the challenges of growing up in the big city. The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse pushed boundaries in ways few Saturday morning cartoons dared to try. The animation was fast, exaggerated, and sometimes surreal. Mighty Mouse himself was a classic hero, but the show often leaned into absurd humor and unexpected twists. Kids never quite knew what was coming next, which made it exciting. The stories could be silly one moment and strangely clever the next. It felt different from everything else on television, almost rebellious. The theme song was bold and dramatic, making the hero feel larger than life. This cartoon trusted kids to keep up with its rapid pace and strange jokes. It stood out as something unique in the lineup, and after that burst of chaotic energy, the next cartoon connected directly to something kids already loved playing at home, and that's when the roller skates came out. Roller Skate Train took over sidewalks and patios like a traveling circus on wheels. One by one, kids grabbed the waist of the person in front, forming a shaky chain that required total trust and zero hesitation. The leader set the pace, everyone else prayed. Cracks in the sidewalk felt like craters, Uneven driveway edges felt like mountains. A single wobble could take down the entire line like dominoes in motion. But the thrill was unbeatable wind in your face, wheels clacking, the world blurring just a little. The sound of plastic wheels on concrete became the soundtrack of summer evenings, while scraped elbows and bruised knees became badges of honor. If someone fell, everyone stopped to help unless they were laughing too hard to stand up. Roller skate train didn't need rules, it needed momentum. And once the momentum faded and wheels were traded for bare feet, Teddy Ruxpin was more than a toy. He was a storyteller, a friend, and a voice that made bedtime feel safe. You placed a cassette in his back, and suddenly his eyes moved, his mouth spoke, and his stories filled the room. Kids believed he was alive, and in a way, he was. His words carried warmth, teaching lessons of kindness and wonder. For many, Teddy's soft voice became part of their childhood rhythm, a lullaby wrapped in fur. He was comfort made real, proof that magic did not need batteries or spells, just a story well told. Zoom was a show unlike anything else on television. It was raw, real, and totally made by kids, for kids. There were no adults running the show, no polished sets or overproduced moments, just pure creativity. A group of enthusiastic children would gather to invent games, share stories, cook simple recipes, and solve puzzles sent in by viewers. What made Zoom special was that it celebrated imagination and teamwork instead of competition. It felt like being part of a secret club where everyone's ideas mattered. The show even had its own playful language called Ooby Dooby, which became a nationwide trend among schoolchildren. For many, Zoom was the spark that made them want to try new things, build, explore, and communicate. It was television that made kids feel powerful, not passive. When an episode ended, you did not just watch. You wanted to join in. And as Zoom proved how real creativity could come from ordinary kids, another show reminded everyone that true kindness could change lives one small act at a time. The Smurfs brought a gentle kind of magic to Saturday mornings. The blue characters lived in a hidden village where teamwork and friendship mattered more than strength. Every Smurf had a personality that kids could instantly recognize, from brainy to clumsy to Papa Smurf. The stories were simple but comforting, usually focused on solving problems together while avoiding Gargamel and his sneaky cat. Kids loved imagining what it would be like to live in mushroom houses and have a whole community that always looked out for one another. The tone was calm and playful, making it perfect for early mornings. The theme song felt cheerful and welcoming, almost like an invitation into their world. Watching the Smurfs felt safe and familiar, like visiting old friends every weekend. And once you left that tiny blue village, the next cartoon bounced into view with medieval adventure and a whole lot of energy. Move the party closer to the makeshift limbo line waiting a few feet away. Clothesline limbo didn't look like much, but it had power. A jump rope tied between two lawn chairs or a drooping clothesline suddenly transformed into the hottest event of the neighborhood. Kids bent backward like blurry little acrobats, arms waving for balance while someone yelled, "No ducking, that's cheating!" Parents watched from porches, shaking their heads but smiling, knowing someone would end up with grass stains down their back. Shoes slipped, bodies collapsed, and someone always bragged about almost making it. In the 70 seconds and 80 seconds, limbo felt exotic, like a tiny slice of the outside world had snuck into suburbia. The rope got lower, the laughter got louder, and eventually someone knocked the whole thing down in one spectacular fail. By then, nobody cared about winning, they cared about surviving the round. And as kids caught their breath and dusted off, "Are you afraid of the dark?" was Nickelodeon's late-night invitation to be scared, and kids loved every second of it. A group called the Midnight Society would gather around a campfire to tell ghost stories, each one bringing eerie soundtracks, creepy characters, and just enough mystery to make you check under your bed afterward. But behind the scares, there was something deeper: creativity. It gave children permission to face fear, to be brave, and to imagine the impossible. The show's unique storytelling, with new tales every episode, kept everyone guessing what would come next. It wasn't just spooky, it was smart. It treated its audience with respect, understanding that children could handle complex emotions and suspense if told the right way. For many, it was the first introduction to horror and storytelling combined, sparking a lifelong love of mysteries and thrillers. But after the campfire stories faded out, Nickelodeon gave kids something lighter, an honest, funny, and clever look at teenage life through the eyes of a girl who broke the fourth wall before it was cool. Muppet Babies was creativity turned into pure imagination. The show reimagined beloved characters as toddlers living in a nursery where anything was possible. Everyday objects became entire worlds, and the stories were powered by pretend play. Kids related to the way the characters imagined adventures from simple toys and furniture. It felt like how children actually played, turning a couch into a mountain or a box into a spaceship. The show encouraged imagination and creativity without talking down to its audience. The animation style felt soft and inviting, perfect for the early hours of the day. Muppet Babies also introduced kids to classic movies and ideas through parody, often without them realizing it. It made learning feel effortless, and after spending time in the nursery, the next cartoon exploded with wild animation and unpredictable humor. The only logical next move was switching to something that combined athletic skill with imagination. Wiffle Ball Ghost Runners was the backyard's answer to not having enough players. The plastic bat, the perforated ball, and a lopsided homemade diamond were all you needed. The magic was in the Ghost Runners' imaginary teammates who advanced the bases every time someone got a hit. Arguments were guaranteed. My Ghost Runner was already on third. No, he wasn't. Yes, he was. The ball floated, curved, and dipped in a way that made every pitch feel unpredictable. Home runs were rare and glorious, especially if they cleared the fence or the hedge or the neighbor's lawn. Grass stains, bare feet, and someone running the bases with the bat still in hand made the game feel like a ritual. And when the bat cracked or the ball split down the seam, kids improvised until it worked again. But eventually, the competitive streak in everyone demanded something even bigger, a series of games, challenges, and events worthy of an entire afternoon. G.I. Joe was the definition of action. These figures were not just toys. They were warriors in the hands of every kid with a backyard. Each soldier had a code name, a mission, and a story. The vehicles, bases, and weapons turned ordinary afternoons into epic wars between good and evil. G.I. Joe made courage tangible, small enough to fit in your hand, big enough to inspire a generation. It was teamwork, bravery, and imagination molded into plastic. And as battles raged across living room floors, a new kind of war began. One fought not with soldiers, but with pixels and controllers. Hey Arnold felt different from the moment it aired. The city skyline, the jazz soundtrack, and the quiet hum of urban life made it feel grounded in reality, yet filled with warmth. Arnold, the football-headed kid, wasn't a superhero or a clown. He was a thoughtful boy who listened, cared, and understood. The show tackled real emotions: loneliness, friendship, poverty, and kindness in a way kids could feel but never felt lectured by. It wasn't about flashy adventures. It was about small moments that mattered. From Helga's secret crush to Grandpa's hilarious wisdom, Hey Arnold became a mirror of real life through animation. The tone was soft, the messages strong, and every story carried a little piece of heart. It was the kind of show that made kids look at their neighborhood differently, seeing stories behind every window and friendship in every face. But where Hey Arnold was heartfelt, the next show took a darker, mysterious route, one that sent chills down every 90s kid's spine. Water, and just enough danger to feel worth it. Slip and Slide Relay was pure adrenaline wrapped in slick yellow plastic. Most families didn't even have the official toy. They just laid out trash bags or tarps, hosed them down, and hoped for the best. Kids lined up at the top of the yard, sprinted toward the slide, and launched themselves like human cannonballs. The relay part came in when someone decided to add rules: tag your partner by sliding into them, run back dripping wet, and send the next person flying. The ground underneath was never forgiving. Hidden rocks, bumps, and uneven grass made every slide a gamble. But the payoff speed, wind, water, and a perfect landing felt unbeatable. The laughter echoed down the block, and parents peeked out the door to make sure nobody broke a limb. The slip and slide didn't last long before tearing, but its legend lasted all summer. And once kids had bruises forming and hearts pumping, Land of the Lost was an adventure that blended imagination and danger like nothing else on television. The story followed a family stranded in a mysterious prehistoric world filled with dinosaurs, strange creatures, and ancient mysteries. Every episode felt like a movie, with special effects that were groundbreaking for its time. The show combined survival, science fiction, and fantasy in a way that made kids believe in the impossible. It was not just about escaping the dinosaurs. It was about exploring unknown worlds and facing fear with courage. The characters were resourceful, clever, and brave, teaching young viewers that even when the world feels lost, there is always a way forward. Land of the Lost gave children a reason to dream big, to imagine what could be hidden beyond the next mountain or cave. And while this world was filled with danger and mystery, the next show turned that energy into something completely wild, colorful, and absolutely unforgettable. Inspector Gadget was pure chaos in the best way. He was a walking collection of mistakes, gadgets, and confusion. Every episode followed the same formula, yet it never got old. Gadget thought he was in control, while Penny and Brain secretly saved the day behind the scenes. Kids loved being in on the secret. Watching the villains fail because of Gadget's accidents made everything funnier. The gadgets were ridiculous and endless, from helicopter hats to extendable arms. The show was colorful, loud, and packed with slapstick humor. The theme song was impossible to forget and instantly signaled fun. Inspector Gadget made kids laugh without trying too hard. It did not need complex stories. It relied on timing, silliness, and repetition. And just when you thought nothing could be more absurd, the next cartoon took kids into a fantasy world where danger was real, and returning home was the ultimate goal, or at least less chaotic on the surface. Sandbox Spelunking was archaeology meets imagination, with a dash of danger if the family cat had gotten there first. Kids dug tunnels, carved out caverns, and built miniature worlds underground, convinced that if they went just a little deeper, they'd find treasure. The sandbox became an entire universe. Highways for toy cars, burrows for action figures, and elaborate secret bases that caved in every 10 minutes. The golden rule: don't step on the roof of someone's tunnel or be prepared to face the wrath of a betrayed friend. Sand clung to everything, shoes filled up, socks were ruined forever, and when someone inevitably hit the bottom of the box with a dramatic thunk, they'd claim victory like they'd struck gold. It was messy, gritty, and immersive in a way modern toys rarely match. But after crouching for hours with sore knees and dusty hands, kids needed something that got them moving again, something that involved speed. Barbie's dream house was the symbol of imagination, style, and luxury in miniature. With pink walls, elegant furniture, and endless accessories, it was more than a toy. It was a universe of possibility. Kids decorated every room, planned stories, and gave Barbie a life that reflected their dreams. She could be a doctor, a pilot, or a superstar, all within the pastel walls of her 3-story mansion. Every drawer opened, every window told a story. The dream house was not about perfection. It was about creation, about making the world just as you imagined it. For many, Barbie's house was the first place where fantasy met design, and imagination learned to live indoors. But for those who preferred a touch of magic and color with their playtime, the next toy brought entire rainbows galloping into their lives. Salute Your Shorts took us to Camp Anawana, a place where pranks were legendary and friendships were forever. This Nickelodeon classic captured the magic of summer like no other show before it. Each episode followed a group of campers as they dealt with bullies, crushes, and the hilarious chaos of growing up away from home. The show's humor felt real because it was. Every kid could relate to getting in trouble, pulling a prank, or trying to survive the dreaded camp counselor Ugg. It celebrated the freedom of summer and the lessons that came with it: loyalty, courage, and a little harmless rebellion. Salute Your Shorts was never just about jokes. It was about how those summer days and sleepless nights built memories that lasted forever. But while this show captured summer's playfulness, the next one taught children something lasting through catchy tunes and clever rhymes that turned learning into a song. The adventures of the Gummy Bears felt like discovering a secret world hidden just out of sight. These characters lived in a medieval fantasy setting filled with castles, knights, and magic. Kids were fascinated by gummy berry juice, which gave the bears the ability to bounce high into the air. The animation was colorful and smooth, making every jump feel exciting. Each character brought something unique to the group, from bravery to wisdom to pure enthusiasm. The stories mixed humor with real danger, giving the show emotional weight without ever feeling too serious. It made fantasy approachable and fun. The theme song was one of the most memorable of the era and instantly raised excitement levels. Gummy Bears made kids want to explore forests and imagine secret societies living nearby. And just when fantasy felt at its peak, the next cartoon took familiar characters and turned them into children just like the audience watching. Kids gravitated to the one thing guaranteed to cool everything down fast. Sprinkler Obstacle Course was childhood engineering at its finest, improvised chaos powered by a garden hose. Someone twisted the sprinkler head to shoot water in unpredictable directions, and suddenly the backyard became a wet gauntlet of slip, slide, and scream. Pool noodles became hurdles. Buckets became checkpoints. The swing set became the final boss. Kids sprinted through sprays of water, shrieked when the cold hit them, and dove through the soggy grass like athletes in training. Nobody finished dry. Nobody finished clean. And nobody finished without laughing. Parents watched from the kitchen window, knowing towels would be needed but not daring to interrupt. For kids, the sprinkler wasn't just a way to cool off. It was a portal into a world where the ordinary backyard felt like an Olympic stage. And once everyone was soaked, exhilarated, and convinced they could run it even faster, the Easy Bake Oven made childhood taste like sugar and joy. It was small, pink, and powered by a light bulb that somehow turned batter into cake. The smell of brownies and cookies drifted through bedrooms, filling the air with sweetness and pride. Kids measured ingredients carefully, pretending to host their own cooking shows. Every little cake felt like a triumph, made with patience, curiosity, and a dash of make-believe. The Easy Bake Oven wasn't just a toy. It was the first taste of independence, a way for kids to create something real, something all their own. The Big Comfy Couch was a gentle, imaginative world that felt like a warm hug. With Lunette the Clown and her doll Molly, the show turned everyday lessons into whimsical adventures on a couch that seemed to hold endless magic. Every episode had a rhythm, stories, songs, stretches, and giggles that taught kids about responsibility, kindness, and self-discovery. One of the most iconic moments was the clock stretch, when Lunette would lie on the floor and move her limbs like clock hands, encouraging kids to join in and move their bodies. The show had a rare charm that made learning feel calm, creative, and comforting. It encouraged children to slow down, use their imagination, and express themselves without fear of being silly. The Big Comfy Couch was not loud or flashy. It was patient and full of heart. It reminded kids that growing up was not about rushing. It was about learning, one soft step at a time. And while Lunette's world was cozy and safe, the next show threw kids headfirst into a wild and colorful musical universe that could only have come from the late 1960s. Captain N the Game Master was a dream come true for kids who loved video games. The show brought classic game characters together into one animated universe. A regular teenager was pulled into a digital world and suddenly became the hero. Kids loved recognizing familiar faces and imagining what it would be like to live inside a video game. The stories were adventurous and fun, filled with action and teamwork. It made gaming feel epic and important. Watching Captain N felt like the future of entertainment at the time. It blended two worlds kids already loved, cartoons and video games. And as technology met imagination, the next cartoon cranked up the style, music, and drama in a way that no one could ignore. And that's when the jump rope came out, along with a set of rules that nobody ever actually agreed on. Jump Rope Courtroom was less a game and more a trial by fire. The rope turned, the chant started, and whoever messed up had to plead their case before the court. Someone tripped? They'd swear they didn't touch the rope. Someone stepped out early? They'd argue the rope was too low. Objections flew like confetti. There were always at least 3 judges, none of whom agreed on anything. The chants, half playground lore and half nonsense, echoed across driveways as kids jumped like their reputations depended on it. And in a way, they did. Losing meant stepping out, watching, waiting for the next round, and hoping the court would rule in your favor next time. The intensity was hilarious. Even the kid who barely knew how to jump could argue like a seasoned lawyer. And once the final appeal was denied and someone claimed victory over the chaos, kids felt ready for a competition where the rules were clear, the stakes were high, and the sound of success echoed off the neighbor's siding. Cabbage Patch Kids were more than dolls. They were a phenomenon. Each one came with a name, a birth certificate, and a promise that you were adopting a new friend. They were soft, round, and full of personality, each face slightly different, making every child feel like theirs was one of a kind. Parents lined up outside stores for hours, hoping to find just one left on the shelf before Christmas morning. For a generation of kids, unwrapping that box meant holding love in yarn and fabric form. They were hugged, dressed, and carried everywhere, becoming part of every childhood adventure. No one forgot the moment they looked into those wide, chubby faces for the first time. But as the dolls filled bedrooms across the country, another toy was twisting minds and testing patience. A tiny cube of color that became a global obsession. The Electric Company brought learning to life with a rhythm that felt alive. Long before digital screens took over, this 1970s classic taught kids about reading, grammar, and language through catchy music, colorful visuals, and an urban sense of cool. Every episode was a mix of energy and education, blending sketch comedy, animation, and songs that made even spelling look exciting. The show featured a young Morgan Freeman, who became an unexpected icon for children just learning their words. What set the Electric Company apart was its ability to teach without feeling like a lesson. It felt like playtime, filled with funky beats and relatable humor that made classrooms seem dull by comparison. The series proved that learning could be electric, literally. It inspired creativity, self-confidence, and curiosity in every kid who tuned in. When the lights dimmed and the credits rolled, children walked away with more than just knowledge. They walked away with rhythm in their minds. And while the Electric Company gave kids the power to read, the next show encouraged them to create, imagine, and explore on their own, using nothing but their minds and whatever they could find around them. Count Duckula mixed horror themes with comedy in a way that felt clever and fresh. The main character was a vampire duck who wanted nothing to do with being scary. Instead of blood, he preferred vegetables, and that alone made kids laugh. The show was filled with dark castles, strange inventions, and fast-talking humor. It trusted kids to understand sarcasm and irony, which made it feel smart. The animation style was bold and expressive, and the jokes came quickly. Count Duckula stood out because it did not follow the usual rules. It took spooky ideas and turned them upside down. Kids who loved monsters but also loved comedy found something special here. And after laughing through haunted halls, the next cartoon blasted into space and showed what high school might look like on another planet. And it all started again the next day. Moon boot races were the closest thing most kids ever got to feeling like astronauts. Those awkward, chunky foam platforms strapped to your feet made every step feel like moving through zero gravity, or at least that's what kids told themselves. The objective was simple: race from one end of the yard to the other. The reality? Pure slapstick. Kids bounced, wobbled, and lurched forward with knees buckling like newborn deer. Every race turned into a demolition derby of limbs and laughter as someone inevitably toppled over, pulling two more kids down like a cosmic chain reaction. Parents watched from lawn chairs, shaking their heads and trying not to intervene. Moon boots turned even the most athletic kid into a klutz, and that was the beauty of it. Winning didn't matter. Surviving upright did. After enough near misses and grass-stained elbows, kids peeled them off and rubbed their sore ankles, ready for something a little more grounded but just as dramatic. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe ruled the toy aisles like no other. With their broad chests, battle armor, and bright colors, these figures brought Saturday morning cartoons to life. He-Man stood for courage and good, while Skeletor embodied every childhood fear. The battles that played out on bedroom floors were loud, wild, and full of imagination. Kids collected castles, beasts, and vehicles to expand their kingdoms, turning simple toys into epic adventures. The power was real, not in muscle, but in creativity. Every child who raised a plastic sword believed they could save Eternia. But while He-Man fought, Reading Rainbow was not just a show about books, it was a journey through imagination. Hosted by LeVar Burton, every episode took children beyond the pages, showing them that stories were more than words on paper. The show's signature line, "Take a look, it's in a book," became a symbol of curiosity and wonder. Each segment felt like an adventure where real kids shared what they were reading, and the world opened up through animated storytelling. It encouraged children to see reading as a gateway to anything they could dream of. In a time before the internet and endless entertainment options, Reading Rainbow proved that knowledge and creativity could be the greatest escape of all. It was soft-spoken, gentle, and meaningful. Everything a childhood show should be. And when the episode ended, every child wanted to grab a book and keep exploring. But Reading Rainbow was only the start. Television soon found another creative way to make learning exciting, this time with a furry little storyteller who had a passion for the classics. Galaxy High was high school taken to an extreme level. It followed human students attending an intergalactic school filled with aliens, advanced technology, and strange customs. Kids loved the idea of being the odd ones out, in a place where everything was unfamiliar. The show blended teen comedy with science fiction, creating stories about fitting in and finding confidence. Each episode felt imaginative and unpredictable. The alien characters were creative and funny, and the setting allowed for endless possibilities. Galaxy High captured the awkwardness of growing up in a way kids understood, even through a science fiction lens. It felt modern and inventive, and once school ended in space, the next cartoon zoomed in closer to home, showing that adventure could exist right inside your own walls. TV Antenna Freeze Dance was the unofficial start to every summer afternoon, the game that required nothing but a boombox, a backyard, and whatever local radio station came in clearest that day. The rules were simple. If the music stopped, you froze. Summer in the 1970s and 1980s, and radio signals weren't exactly reliable. Songs cut out mid-chorus because of static, commercials hijacked dance sessions without warning, and sometimes the DJ just talked over the intro for what felt like years. Kids turned those glitches into part of the challenge. Someone always accused someone else of moving. Someone else always denied it. Arguments turned into laughter, and rounds went on forever until the heat or boredom won. The best part was knowing nobody controlled the game, not even the players. It was chaos, but the kind of chaos that summer was built from. And once everyone was warmed up and a little sweaty, there was only one thing left to do: Teddy Ruxpin was more than a toy. He was a friend. With his soft fur and moving mouth, he told stories that made bedtime feel safe and magical. You inserted a cassette into his back, pressed play, and suddenly his eyes came to life. He spoke with warmth, as if he truly saw you. Kids whispered secrets to him, hugged him tightly, and believed every word he said. Teddy Ruxpin was comfort in a box, the kind of toy that made you feel less alone. His voice became part of countless childhood nights, soft and steady like a lullaby. But when the lights went out, another kind of toy brought color back into the dark, one that turned simple bulbs into glowing art. The Bozo Show was more than a television program. It was a morning tradition. Every child who tuned in knew the sound of that circus music and the voice that called Bozo the Clown. It was bright, unpredictable, and always full of laughter. Bozo was not just a character. He was a symbol of fun and innocence, hosting games, magic tricks, and slapstick comedy that could make any gloomy morning feel like a carnival. The audience of children sitting in those bleachers became part of the show, shouting, cheering, and sometimes getting slimed or pied. For many, being selected to toss ping-pong balls into the grand prize game was the dream of a lifetime. Bozo made kids feel like stars, and adults remember what it was like to be one. It was chaotic, but joyful, a reflection of pure, unfiltered childhood. And while Bozo made laughter a daily habit, the next show brought mischief and adventure to a place every kid dreamed of spending their summer: camp. Care Bears, where kindness turned into color. Each bear wore its heart on its belly, literally. Cheer Bear, Grumpy Bear, Tenderheart. Each one represented a feeling, teaching children that emotions were something to be embraced, not hidden. Their soft fur and warm smiles made them more than toys. They were comfort on difficult days and company on lonely nights. Care Bears reminded kids that caring was powerful and that love could heal just about anything. Every hug from a Care Bear carried a bit of that message, that simple, timeless belief in the power of sharing your heart. If this brought back a piece of your Saturday mornings, tell me your favorite memory in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more moments that take you back.